This is one of those topics that no one really wants to think about, but if you're a parent, a homeowner, married, or helping take care of aging parents, it's something that honestly deserves a little attention. I'm talking about estate planning. And before you tune out thinking it's complicated or expensive, that's actually why I want to mention Trust and Will. Trust and Will makes estate planning feel way less intimidating than it sounds. They offer modern, attorney-designed wills and trusts that you can create online. And the process is surprisingly straightforward. In fact, you can create a will in as little as 30 minutes. That includes things like guardianship for your kids or pets, how your assets are distributed, and even healthcare directives. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your loved ones with Trust and Will, the most trusted name in online estate planning. Go to trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. That's trustandwill.com/future for 20% off. trustandwill.com/FUTURE.
Hi, I'm Chandler Garcia. As a PICU nurse and global health advocate, I've cared for women and children all over the world, from Costa Rica to Egypt to Kenya and beyond. And no matter where I go or how tough the conditions get, I always wear my FIGS. These scrubs are lightweight, breathable, and super soft, perfect for long shifts in any environment. They've got pockets in all the right places, the fit is flexible, and they're durable through every admission, surgery, and post-op. But it's not just about the scrubs. Another big part of what I love about FIGS is when they say they're committed to supporting healthcare workers all over the world, they mean it. I recently joined them on an impact trip to India where I worked in triage, caring for babies in a mobile clinic. My FIGS aren't just what I wear. They're part of the impact I want to make. Wherever my work takes me, FIGS helps me show up ready to make a difference while looking and feeling my best. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX.
A warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Colby Dant, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Had the pleasure of meeting him out here in lovely Las Vegas over the weekend and figured, hey, let's have a nice chat about what we're going to be getting in the Sweet 16, what we've seen in the NCAA Tournament thus far, and a little bit about the coaching carousel as well, as I'm not really speculating on a lot of these jobs. I will in a second talk about the North Carolina situation, so I'll give you guys a little bit there, but I'm going to chat with him about what we can expect here in the coaching carousel this offseason, some of the moves that he likes already as well. We're certainly going to be talking about the Sweet 16 games, who he thinks is the most dominant team remaining in the NCAA tournament as well, and so much more. So lots of fun to be had there. In the final segment, we've got 2 NIT games this Wednesday. I'm going to give you guys picks and analysis on both of them as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letter CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire into whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Really, the lone questions I got was, who do I think North Carolina's going after with regards to coaching search? And I would say, keep pretty much all options available on your bingo card. And personally, I don't get too much into these coaching searches. Like, I will certainly react when North Carolina hires on a guy, but unless we're doing things like Kalshi, if you're in a very, very lucky jurisdiction where you're able to bet on next coach over at North Carolina, insert your favorite school here that has a coaching vacancy, there's really not much money to be made here. And, well, we're going to have 7 months to react to all these coaching hires. So there's a lot to be looking forward to there. And it's like I explained on the podcast yesterday, I want to highlight the games that we're actually going to be getting. We will concern ourselves with the 2026-27 season once the nets are cut down out there in Indianapolis, and that'll be in less than 2 weeks. Like, we've got plenty of time to be reacting to everything like this, and it's a big reason why I'm not giving you too much in terms of the transfer portal as well, because we've already seen hundreds and hundreds of guys enlist. There's going to be probably at the end of the offseason 2,500 guys that enter, which means that there's going to be more guys that enter into the transfer portal than guys that return to school. And that's a big reason why I'm not highlighting it too much, because it's actually news when a guy actually returns to school. But had said with the North Carolina coaching search, it certainly is going to be shaping up what we get for the rest of this coaching carousel if a guy gets picked off. And if they go the NBA route, that actually is a good thing for a lot of these other schools, which means that you're not going to have the domino effect like we saw 2 years ago. Keep in mind that when Andy Enfield took that job over at SMU, that left a coaching vacancy for USC, and then Eric Musselman goes from Arkansas, heads on over there. John Calipari goes from Kentucky, and he heads on over to Arkansas. So, these have massive domino effects if they do hire on. Insert your favorite coach as in the Sweet 16 here. Insert someone like a Josh Schertz, which I don't know if he's going to be at the top of the list. I would have to think that it's going to be more like a Mark Byington, someone like that. That's going to be more towards the top of the list. But, again, reckless speculation. But if you're a top coach in college basketball, North Carolina probably going to be giving you a call. And what we did get was the NIT in our lives on Tuesday. We had ourselves a pair of great games. Let's take a look back at them, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Depended upon your closing number as to whether or not you got the cover or not. Wichita State was anywhere between a 3.5 to a 4.5 point underdog. Tulsa gets the job done 83-79. Tulsa actually got up 24 points in this game, and then they relinquished it late for Wichita State. They go 29 of 31 to free throw line, just 2 of 19 from 3 for Tulsa, 12 of 29 from 3. Miles Barnstable, well, he was stable, 24 points. 5 of 9 from 3-point range, but for Tulsa, they did lose the rebound battle in this game, 44-39, as for Wichita State, they clawed their way back with the Berg. Will Berg down low, giving you 8 boards, 7 points, and off the bench, TJ Williams, 19 solid points there. So Tulsa, they move on to the Final Four of the NIT, and another team that did, New Mexico, the Lobos, this by a count of 84-69, and you were able to get the under in this game. New Mexico, I believe they've had about 2/3 of their games go over the total, and for New Mexico, just 6 of 20 from 3. St. Joe's, they had issues shooting from 3 all season long, 9 of 33, as they look like average Joes from beyond the arc. Didn't do a bad job in terms of turnover battle, 10-10, they tied up there, and for New Mexico, 22 out of 28 at the free throw line, so they did enough to be able to cover that number. Jake Hall, 24 points, 4 rebounds, and then Tomislav Bujan, 27 points, 11 rebounds. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we've gotten over the last 7 days in college basketball, this is the opening rounds of the NIT along with the NCAA Tournament. And hey, crown action, that's going to be coming our way next week as well, and I'll be highlighting those games, but we have seen over the last 7 days quite a bit with regards to the over. 37 overs to 31 unders, that's a 54.4% hit rate, and favorites are eating right now. 37-31 against the spread, 54.4% there. Overall for the season, it's been an underdogs and unders season. 2,903 unders, 2,820 overs, so 50.7% there, and underdogs still hitting at 51.5% overall for the season. 2,946 covers for the underdogs, 2,776 for favorites. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now. That's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming next, let's chat it up with our good friend Colby Dant of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
You know, this is one of those topics that no one really wants to think about, but if you're a parent, a homeowner, married, or helping take care of aging parents, it's something that honestly deserves a little attention. I'm talking about estate planning. And before you tune out thinking it's complicated or expensive, that's actually why I want to mention Trust and Will. Trust and Will makes estate planning feel way less intimidating than it sounds. They offer modern, attorney-designed wills and trusts that you can create online. And the process is surprisingly straightforward. In fact, you can create a will in as little as 30 minutes. That includes things like guardianship for your kids or pets, how your assets are distributed, and even healthcare directives. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your loved ones with Trust and Will, the most trusted name in online estate planning. Go to trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. That's trustandwill.com/future for 20% off. trustandwill.com/future.
Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is CBBanalytics, all one word, .com. For anyone that is is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Colby Dant aboard. He does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He and Ryan McIntyre do an absolutely immaculate job with college experience, where they're breaking down every game every day, not just in college basketball, but with college basketball starting to come to an end, the baseball season is starting to get into full swing. You're going to get a lot of those spring games when it comes to college football as well. So they're doing a great job on so many different fronts. For Colby, you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at @TheCobyD altogether. And Colby, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Oh, well, you're welcome, and always a pleasure to talk with you. Been a few months, so it's good to reconnect. It was great seeing you out in Vegas. Thanks for having me on the show, man.
Absolutely. It was a great time in Vegas. Got to see so many of the folks over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. A lot of you fans that tune in every single day, and I appreciate you guys, because without the fans, without great people like Colby, the great guests that are on this show, there is no podcast. So that was an amazing weekend to be had. And Colby, it was a very interesting first week of the NCAA tournament. I'm sure that you're probably in lockstep with me, hoping for a few more upsets, but just how do you take a look at this Sweet 16 that we've got, where it's all power conference teams, and other than Iowa and Texas, all the teams that we pretty much thought would be here?
Like, I feel like they're pushing the narrative of like, well, the sport is changing. And look, I'm open to that belief of like the Cinderella is out. You know, I'm open to thinking that the pay is so different, but I don't think we have enough data points yet. And I would also push back that like, well, there's been so much change in the sport, all of college sports really, over 5 years or 4 years now, that it's like, I don't think it's fair to adjust. If anything, like I think the teams were just as good mid-major wise. I think they got misseeded. I think they got most of the right teams into the tournament. I don't think it was a crazy, like last year, you know, I feel like they really snubbed West Virginia, but I feel like they did a better job of getting the right teams in, but they did a terrible job of seeding them. Northern Iowa getting St. John's in the first round was terrible. I think you could have had a mid-major go to the Sweet 16 like them, or like Utah State. I think Utah State really passed the eye test to me, and had they not been a 9 seed, I think they'd probably be in the Sweet 16. I also think you might have more upsets. I personally thought Howard was better than a 16 seed. I personally thought Siena was better than the 16 seed. I think they proved it if you watch the tape. Everyone wants to rush to judgment on quickly reacting to saying, hey, the small schools don't have the money, which there might be some validity to that. But I would push back also saying I think there's better basketball players than ever, like a bigger list of them. So I think the mid-majors get some of them, and I don't think we've looked at it. I think the committee does not watch every single night, and I think that shows when you see the seeding. So I think that's something to consider on why we didn't have a Cinderella. But look, I also am one that thinks, you know, NC State 2 years ago with Kevin Keatts was a Cinderella. They needed to win the play-in game. I don't think Cinderellas are limited to a small school.
They needed a front end of a 1-1 miss by Virginia just to be able to get a shot in overtime in the ACC tournament.
Exactly, and a banked in 3 in that game as well at the buzzer. So I still like value Iowa and Texas as Cinderellas to a certain extent. I know Texas spends way more than, so it's like I get it, but like I never knew there was a definitive notion that it had to be a mid-major. I look at Jim Valvano's 83 Wolfpack as a Cinderella story. You know, there's plenty of these that I think you can use. And like NC State, ironically, you know, is a school that we brought up twice, but there's other examples of this throughout the years. I think Iowa, you look at Iowa's roster, it's like Signetti at Indiana. When you say like, okay, the whole team is JMU recruits. Well, most of Iowa's team played at the D2 ranks. So, I mean, like, or played at Drake. You know what I mean? So it's like, are you evaluating that and saying that's a mid-major team? Because when I look at it on paper, it looks like a mid-major team. Now, credit to them for beating Florida, but that's still a Cinderella to me.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I do value Iowa as a little bit more of a Cinderella because you do have a guy in Ben McCollum that 24 months ago was coaching at the D2 ranks, obviously bringing over Bennett Sturts, Tavion Banks, all those guys, because a little bit harder when you factor in the money factor for Texas, but I do think that that's an interesting game that we are going to be seeing in the Sweet 16, as well as we've got Colby Dant of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, because don't think that a lot of people thought Iowa and Nebraska were going to be meeting up in the Sweet 16, considering this time last week, Nebraska had 0 career NCAA tournament wins, and for Iowa, this is their first Sweet 16 game since 1999. How do you take a look at this matchup? One where it's a rematch of what we saw in the regular season because you've got two Big Ten teams.
I love it. I mean, first off, border war, I'm a gigantic college sports fan, and regionality is at the heartbeat of college sports, in my opinion. So when you get that, the series, they've been playing this series for like over 120 years. So that right there is a win. But also, Nebraska beat them in overtime, I believe, the last time they played. And then back in February, Iowa won by 5 in a close game. They stormed the court. So love the contrast in styles, too. I actually think this is probably the most exciting matchup, just because when you add in the rivalry aspect of this, of, a border battle right there, and then the fact that this will be another time of them playing, which only is going to rev things up, I think it's the most exciting matchup. And I think regardless, whoever wins going to the Elite Eight is going to be an unbelievable story. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, the storylines, the game's still past the eye test. I know they have the stat, well, they won by 20. Okay, whatever. I don't really care how you lose, right? As long as, you deliver on games. And majority of these games, I think, delivered. Like Hofstra, Alabama is a classic example of a score getting blown out of proportion. Like, that game was a very good watch, in my opinion. I think the NCAA tournament's fine. Don't expand it. And I think the storylines are still there, just like they were when George Mason went to the Final Four. You look at it right now, Nebraska's never won a tournament game. They're a win away from the Elite Eight. Iowa hadn't been to the Sweet 16 since, 26 years or whatever, 27 years. That storyline is there. You just great storylines elsewhere. I mean, Kelvin Sampson, is this his last hurrah? I think it's great that you have all these old coaches that are here, much against, I think, what a lot of people would assume. You got Rick Barnes, who's been in it forever. He's had this monkey on his back. The guy can't win a national championship. Well, another opportunity for him. Otzelberger, can Iowa State break through? This has been a narrative that, he can't get deep into the NCAA tournament. I think there's just plenty of storylines. Slick Rick's last ride. Could it be his? Could it be Tom Izzo? A lot of people say Izzo hasn't won an NCAA tournament or hasn't won a national championship in 26 years, right? And that's another narrative you could say. The Big Ten hasn't won one in 26 years. Well, guess what? You look around, you got Michigan, you got Michigan State, you got Purdue, you got Iowa, Nebraska, and Illinois. So, I mean, I think the sport is fine. If anything, Greg, I actually think you've seen the talent spread out, at least among one thing we do know. Maybe I'm open to the belief of the 12 to 16 seeds not being as good. Maybe. I think we need more data. But also, I do believe the talent is more spread out from 1 to 12. I think that's where you're going to see more power schools alive to win the thing than traditionally. I'm fascinated by this tournament, and these games have delivered. I mean, I had Wisconsin going far in my bracket. That High Point Wisconsin game was awesome. The High Point Arkansas game was awesome. How about the Vanderbilt? Nebraska?
I had Vanderbilt in the Final Four.
Yeah, I had them in the Elite Eight. I mean, so that game was awesome, though. If you're not happy with the product because there's no, VCU run to the Final Four or something, you're not doing the sport its true service there. It's a phenomenal sport for many reasons. And some years it's going to go chalk. And I also think we're in this transitional phase. I mean, not to dive too much into it, because I know you didn't directly ask me about that. But I think, you look at a team like High Point. They've thrown their money in. I just read that they've had, since they won that game against Wisconsin, that 19,000 people enrolled or showed interest in enrolling. I think once these conferences figure it out, even the mid-majors, I think you'll see the teams that will go further into it financially, and I think they'll steal some of the top talent. I think High Point's still capable financially of stealing some starting players or key reserves on Power 5 teams. And it's kind of like it's always been to a certain extent. Yes, it sucks seeing your players leave. I think the transfer portal is the bigger problem, but I'm not ready to just assume that the gap is so big. If anything, I just think you got to let the dust settle. It's like all these conferences, like the Big 12 or something, if you take a look at it from football, losing Texas and Oklahoma, well, now you're seeing Texas Tech emerge. With a new day comes new opportunities. And I think over the next 5-10 years, we're going to see certain programs realize that they are the team to beat within their conferences, and they're going to throw more money into their programs, and they'll separate. I think all this is just an overreaction.
Yep, and I do think that one, shall we say, residual effect of everything, as well as the fact that you now have some of these guys that are fringe top 100, top 150 recruits going to more mid-majors because they're able to get playing time right away as well. We saw that with Nick Lewis, I believe it was, over at VCU. So I think that is going to be big to take a look at. And something else that's big to take a look at is just this field in general, because with the Sweet 16, we've got 3 out of the 4 1 seeds remaining. We've got all of our 2s remaining. And just when you take a look at the bracket right now, who do you think is playing the best basketball right now out of all the 16 teams remaining?
That's a great question. I would say, because the injuries have taken a toll on the sport right now. You look at Duke, I don't think they're nearly as good now. I know they were able to separate against TCU, but I don't know that I thought that the referee was a little shady there. Iowa State, obviously, they've gotten dinged up now. You've already seen some of the, like with the Jefferson injury, but you've already seen BYU and Texas Tech, who were playing great ball, take L's. I'm waiting for Alabama. I know theirs wasn't an injury, but it was a problem with the law. It does make me worry about those teams. And Arizona, in my opinion, didn't look as good as I thought they would against Utah State, but I still would be hard-pressed to go against them, even though Tommy Lloyd's had his postseason struggles as well. I would say Arizona and Houston have my eye as far as they still look pretty darn good, but I feel like right now you could actually make a case for majority of these teams winning the national championship. I don't want to say everyone. I would say there's a tier, but there's a good amount of these teams that I think could.
And I'll ask you about this as well, because I do think that Arizona is playing the best basketball of any team in the country right now. I have been impressed really from start to finish by this team, but I took Purdue in my bracket to be able to win the title. They're going to be facing off against Texas in that classic 3 versus they're at classic 2 versus 11 matchup. How do you take a look at a Purdue team that they were the preseason number 1? They obviously fell off, but we both know this. You want to be playing your best basketball in March, and it does feel like Purdue has been able to do that dating back to the start of the Big Ten tournament.
100%, and I know you know this, but I mean, guard play goes so far in March, and that's always one you want to circle is when you look at Purdue's roster. They got really good guard play. And they have had a nice route so far, too. I mean, yet another play-in team makes a Sweet 16. I mean, this is something we cover. It's very often you see this now, I feel like. Tennessee's done it. Syracuse done it. VCU's done it. I'm forgetting some, too, like UCLA. So it's a nice run to get, but I mean, hey, Texas is coming into their own as well. I'm intrigued a little bit about the matchup, but yeah, I think Purdue should be able to get it. I think we're 7.5-point favorites, but they're dangerous just because their guard play, and obviously Coach Painter's no stranger to winning deep into March.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And when you've got a backcourt that has already been to a national championship, not just have been to a few NCAA tournaments, what have you, but have quite literally been to a title game, that's something that speaks to me as well. So that's going to be something to be able to highlight as well. And Colby, I know that you guys are going to do a great job in terms of gauging the NCAA tournament, but I know you join me a lot during the offseason as well, and the dominoes are already starting to fall, and I do want to ask you about this. How do you take a look at the coaching carousel this time of year? Because I feel like any team that has an opening, they should be trying to be able to get that hire done right about now, because it feels like a lot of great coaches, whether that be the likes of a Brian Hodgson, whether that be Jared Calhoun going over to Cincinnati, they're already coming off the board, and I think that it's very interesting to take a look at what's already happened here in the offseason.
I mean, the news each day, it's super important, and nowadays, Greg, you don't have the excuse of like, well, he's in year 1, because a lot of these coaches can bring their teams with them. I mean, we've talked Ben McCollum at Iowa. He was able to flip their whole identity. And look, McCaffrey is a good basketball coach, but their whole identity, they were like a scoring team that was soft and couldn't play defense. And in year 1, because he can bring in a lot of his roster, they changed to like a Paul Westhead team to like a Tony Bennett team overnight. I think that's one of the best examples you can show team by team, but you can do this. We've seen this a bunch before, I mean, when Dusty May took the Michigan job, he brought Vlad Golden with him. You've seen this so on and so on. Like you take 1 or 2 players can be all the difference. They can play such a beacon for your roster because they know what to expect from your system to the other players. So it is super pivotal these days. I think the most fascinating one to me is Coach Randy Bennett, who I've had on my show. Love interviewing him. Think he's such a good coach. And a lot of people have given him the narrative that he couldn't win the big game in the NCAA tournament. And I guess that's fair, even though I think he did get to 1 Sweet 16. But they lacked athleticism and resources, I think it would be fair to say. And now he's going to Arizona State, where there seems to be a commitment to resources. He grew up in Arizona. That one is fascinating to me just because he's in his 60s. But, man, I think Arizona State finally did the smart hire instead of chasing, the NBA player or chasing this or that. Like, a very interesting hire to me. and I'm eager to see what he can do with money. I compared it yesterday, and I keep going to the football comparison, so I apologize if your fan base isn't gigantic football fans, but there's a coach that ran the triple option at Navy in Georgia Southern named Paul Johnson that went to Georgia Tech. And I was captivated by this because we hadn't seen a team run the option in like 20 years since like Nebraska. And they ended up going to 2 Orange Bowls and winning one of them. I think it was very successful. That reminds me of this with the because it was so late in his career, just like it is here. With Coach Bennett going into Tempe. That one is fascinating. But yeah, it is super important. And I'm waiting to see like the Butler job. I mean, a lot of these other gigs. We saw Hodgson go to turn down Syracuse to go to Providence. That's fascinating right there. I mean, think about that 20 years ago, Greg. Turning down Syracuse to go to Providence. I can only assume it has to do with the fact the Big East schools and the WCC schools, Gonzaga, the Pac-12 next year, are going to get an influx of cash because they don't have basketball. The sport is so fascinating right now. But to your point, it is super important to be locking down these coaches. I saw Wes Miller get fired from Cincinnati, but hired at Charlotte. I think that's a slam dunk. I think Calhoun to Cincinnati is a slam dunk. The GA there for Bob Huggins back when Kenyon Martin was there. And I think it's great to see these teams not only get their guys, but also make a strong commitment financially. And Cincinnati, I know, did that as one, but that's what they're going to need to do. We're at this pivotal time in college sports where we've taken the money away from paying all the sports, and now there's this gigantic rush to make sure your revenue sports, basketball and football, and maybe a little bit of baseball or hockey, you better be good, and you better commit to being good, or you might find yourself in a bad conference, or a subpar conference 20 years from now or 10 years from now. So it's all fascinating, but I love watching the coaching hire. I can't wait to see what everyone's doing next. I think it's so interesting. We could talk about any of these, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. And we are going to have a lot of time to be catching up on that because we've got a lot of teams that are already making moves. I think we had a few coaches in waiting, like what we saw over at Creighton. They were able to get a jump start on Alan Huss, who really started that, shall we say, run for High Point with them making the NCAA tournament last year. They brought him in last offseason. So
can I ask you about that one? I'm curious here. With McDermott, obviously a coaching legend in Omaha, done such a great job at Creighton. He had named him coach in waiting and had not announced his retirement until, yesterday. I wonder, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, I wonder if he saw High Point success, knowing that Huss kind of built that thing and said, man, I told him to come here. Maybe I should get out of the way and give it to him now because of that. I wonder, had High Point not been in the NCAA tournament, if McDermott was back for another year. I kind of think he would have been, but I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I do think that he was probably thinking, man, when I start to experience a little bit of a fall off, I would love to be able to bring it over to this guy. If Creighton had a little bit of a better year this year, I think that McDermott would probably be back, and we'd probably have Alan Huss waiting for another year, maybe another 2 years, because keep in mind, it was much like what we saw with Syracuse, where you had the coach in waiting for like a decade. That was absolutely insane, to say the least. And Mike Hopkins was the coach in waiting, took the job over at Washington because he was in waiting for so long. So, I feel like it was just how long the run would go, but I do think that it's two-pronged, the lack of success that Creighton had this year and the absolute just tremendous season that High Point had 2 years ago. So I do think that sort of goes hand in hand, just like what goes hand in hand, great college analysis, and you guys over at the College Experience. Colby, you're doing an absolutely amazing job with our good friend Ryan McIntyre, not just college basketball, but baseball, football, and so much more. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Oh, yeah, thanks, brother. And yeah, youtube.com/The College Experience is the hub for all of our stuff. We got a Frozen 4 episode we're going to do with college hockey later tonight, and then college baseball and college football experience episodes. And those are all solo podcasts as well. The college basketball experience, the college football experience, the FCS college football experience, the college baseball experience, and so on and so on. But we all come together as one, youtube.com/The College Experience. Jump on over there if you can. It's a live show you can watch visually as well as listen to audioly. So I really appreciate you letting us do this. And yeah, man, it was great seeing you in Vegas, and I look forward to the next time we get to hang out.
Absolutely. And Colby, he does such a great job looking at this great sport of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he learns such great insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks, Colby, for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Up next, just 2 games on the card as we've got ourselves some NIT action for this Wednesday, and I'll get you picks and analysis on both games as we hit some bacon.
Hi, I'm Chandler Garcia. As a PICU nurse and global health advocate, I've cared for women and children all over the world, from Costa Rica to Egypt to Kenya and beyond. And no matter where I go or how tough the conditions get, I always wear my FIGS. These scrubs are lightweight, breathable, and super soft, perfect for long shifts in any environment. They've got pockets in all the right places, the fit is flexible, and they're durable through every admission, surgery, and post-op. But it's not just about the scrubs. Another big part of what I love about FIGS is when they say they're committed to supporting healthcare workers all over the world, they mean it. I recently joined them on an impact trip to India where I worked in triage, caring for babies in a mobile clinic. My FIGS aren't just what I wear. They're part of the impact I want to make. Wherever my work takes me, FIGS helps me show up ready to make a difference while looking and feeling my best. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure to be joined by our guy, Colby Dant, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, did so once again today. So a big thanks to Colby for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on both games on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some make shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_D1. Well, we're just going in time order today. It doesn't get much easier than that. Illinois State versus Dayton, Nevada versus Auburn, and then we get the Sweet 16 action back in our lives tomorrow. So let's have some fun here with 607, 608. Illinois State, they are on the road against Dayton, and Dayton does find themselves as a 7.5 point favorite. Totals between 139 to 140.5. I do like the over here. I did set my total at a 142.5 as you have an Illinois State defense that overall for the season, they've been really good. You look at them in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 44th in the country, and Dayton's 42nd. So both of these teams are pretty rock solid on defense, but for Illinois State, they're actually a top 10 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home, well outside the top 100 away from home. They allow 23.5 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, but you also have a Dayton team that relies heavily on turnovers, 11th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and if they don't generate that turnover, they give it up from three. They are 268th in the country in opponent's three-point shooting percentage at 35.4%, and you got an Illinois State team that does a great job in terms of not allowing second and third chances. 11th in the country defensive rebound percentage, 23.1% of opponents' missed shots resulted in an offensive rebound, and I think that Illinois State holds in there on the inside. They are 77th with regards to their two-point shooting percentage. With Dayton, they're more like 151st with their two-point shooting percentage, as Emil Letang has been able to do a pretty solid job down low. He stands about 7'1", supplies the team with about 12.6 rebounds per game. I like Jordan Durcock as well. Got injured midseason. He's been able to come back, give this team a nice shot in the arm with about 9 points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists, and then Javon Bennett, Deshaun Montgomery. Those are your top two scorers. Combined for about 30 points per game between the two of them. They shoot about 34.5% from three, and that's where Dayton shoots in general. That's just a hair above country average. Meanwhile, for Illinois State, you were expecting a little bit more from Johnny Kinzinger from the outside. He ended up shooting about 32% for the season, but hit a few big shots when it counted against Wake Forest. Has been able to get the team 11.5 points, 3.5 assists per game for an Illinois State team that they're about country average in terms of taking care of the ball, 11 turnovers per game, so Dayton should be able to get a few turnovers there, but this has been a team that's been able to do a rock solid job down low with Chase Walker, give you about 13.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Your ancillary guys, and Tyree Coleman, Bowden Scumberg, number 3 and 4 scorers that combine for 19.8 points per game. They both shoot about 40% from three. Landon Wolf shoots about 39% from the outside. I do think that that's going to be enough for this Illinois State team to remain lively. They don't get to the free throw line a ton, but they don't allow their opponents to get to the free throw line much either. They're a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and with Dayton being susceptible to giving up some shots from the outside, I do think that that allows Illinois State to be able to hold in this game, in a game where you're going to see two teams that aren't necessarily Blazers, but at the same time, they're not super duper slow either, with Illinois State about 249th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, Dayton about 216th. So did set a total here of a 142.5. I like the over, and anything of 7+ with Illinois State made them a 6.5 point underdog, and we wrap things up with 609, 610. Nevada and Auburn do battle, and Auburn at home is a 9.5 point favorite. Total on scheme, it is 154.5. set a total of a 154. So 154.5, the bare bones minimum buy point on taking the under. As for Nevada, they're about 248th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Auburn is playing quite fast. They're about 115th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Not aggressively fast, though, but for Auburn, where this team has really gone wrong is with their just overall defense. This is a team that, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 297th. They are allowing teams at home to shoot 37.4% from three, 329th in the country. In Nevada, 69th, with shooting 35.8% from three-point range. That is a top 75 mark in the country. Now, you have an Auburn team that's been pretty rock solid in terms of their overall scoring, top 35 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and both of these teams rely heavily on getting to the free throw line. Auburn third in the country in terms of free throws attempted on a per possession basis. Nevada is actually number one, and for Auburn, they're about country average in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. Nevada is hovering right around about 265th, but for Nevada, I do think that this team is going to be able to do a nice job on the turnover front. They're a top 55 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Corey Camper, along with Von Weems in the backcourt, have been solid. Weems shoots 38.5% for three with 10 points, 4 rebounds per game. Camper, 17 points. He shoots about 40% from three-point. Tyshawn Comer has been able to give you about 11 points per game. And then Elijah Price is your main man down low, 12.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. And Auburn should have a nice advantage on the glass, top 35 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage. But keep in mind that Keyshawn Murphy is currently not playing with the team here in the NIT, so Keyshawn Hall needs to be Mr. Do It All. 19.5 points, 7 boards, 2.5 assists, shoots 37% for three. And Taj Pettiford is a rock solid player in terms of giving you some scoring at 15 points, 3.5 assists per game, and shot just 28.5% from three. Kevin Overton has come on strong. He's shooting about 40% from three-point range, and I've also liked what I've seen out of Caden Magwood. He overall for the season has only been able to give you about 4 points per game. Had to be banged up because he was missing for about half the season, but he had 14 big points in that game against South Alabama. They're giving him some more minutes, and he's been able to bring a little bit of stability to the offense. But I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a, shall we say, slower tempo game. I do think that Nevada, with the way that they shoot it so well from three-point range, they're going to be able to hold in there. And I do think that Auburn's ability to grab second and third chances really does get limited without Murphy out there in the fold. So I do like the under, semi-total 154, and I'm willing to take the points with Nevada. Made him an 8-point dog, and that wraps things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. A big thanks to our good friend Colby Dant, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you'll have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GUNet_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, that is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Coming at you guys every single day with picks and analysis on every single game every single day, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chandler Garcia. As a PICU nurse and global health advocate, I've cared for women and children all over the world, from Costa Rica to Egypt to Kenya and beyond. And no matter where I go or how tough the conditions get, I always wear my FIGS. These scrubs are lightweight, breathable, and super soft, perfect for long shifts in any environment. They've got pockets in all the right places, the fit is flexible, and they're durable through every admission, surgery, and post-op. But it's not just about the scrubs. Another big part of what I love about FIGS is when they say they're committed to supporting healthcare workers all over the world, they mean it. I recently joined them on an impact trip to India where I worked in triage, caring for babies in a mobile clinic. My FIGS aren't just what I wear. They're part of the impact I want to make. Wherever my work takes me, FIGS helps me show up ready to make a difference while looking and feeling my best. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX.